How goes it all? Welcome back to Patterson Properties. Hopefully, you guys are having a great and exceptional evening. All right, now today we'll be talking about will there ever be a good time to buy a home again? That is a great question. You've heard analysts make their various predictions on the subject matter, and it should be interesting to say the least because I remember like before the pandemic, buying my first investment property during the wintertime. I remember a lot of times the housing prices weren't as high because demand wasn't as high as it is now. One, and then two, I remember most people this time of year are kind of settled in. So especially people who have families, it's like I always like to call between the beginning of the school year and obviously till April, May timeframe. That's the hibernation season of for families and whatnot, really not trying to move like that. It's like great example. Usually, when they try to have members of the military transition to another duty location and assignment, they, especially if they have a family, they try to do it during the summertime so the kids can switch schools and things of that nature. So usually the summertime is obviously the time where the deals are just coming and going, people are moving, the movers and shakers and all that good stuff. But we're in February now, 2022, and it's hibernation season for a lot of people. So not that many homes for sale, even in major metropolitan areas. People for the most part are just sitting stagnated and whatnot, like it's the height of the pandemic, but it's interesting. But anyways, now the title of the article is very interesting because it doesn't seem like housing prices are going to become reasonable anytime soon. Now, does it mean that people should just quit and stop looking for a home to live in or an investment property? I say absolutely not. Now, the article that I read today stated that under the conditions, many first-time buyers are likely wondering, when will the housing market settle down? And if I want to buy a house soon, is it wisest to dive in now or wait? Based on my conversation with housing experts, the short answers are it'll probably calm down a bit this year in 2022, but it'll still remain kind of wild, like the wild, wild west, and you don't have to wait, but don't do something rash because of the friends market that we're in right now. Even though home prices soared during the pandemic wasn't the underlying cause. There's been a longer brewing imbalance between supply and demand. On the supply side, the number of houses being built in 2010 was about half of what it was in the early 2000s, which means fewer houses available now. On top of that, baby boomers are staying in their homes relatively late in life, which further restricts supply. Meanwhile, demand has been propped up by low interest rates, which makes it cheaper for buyers to borrow money in demographics. Millennials like myself, who are aging into their peak home buying years, are relatively a large generation. With all that being said, most people realize that millennials are very, very, very hungry and eager to purchase their first home right now. They're leaving the major cities, the pandemic and the lockdowns, and in most major cities, the lockdowns are most, people say, egregious than other parts of America. Than the suburbs and in the rural areas. So, people have families, people spend more time at home, so people want more space. It just makes sense. The article also stated that one big caveat is that in many markets, demand has been so high and supply so low that buyers have been willing to waive the contingencies on their offer, such as finalizing their purchase after a home inspection. And the article stated that against doing this because a lot of people are against doing this because it's risky. If everybody else is buying in a frenzy, that doesn't mean you should buy in a frenzy too. Some of the people who win those bidding wars may not have made the best decisions. Better to insist on the usual contingencies, even if that means postponing your purchase or finding a different house. Heck, if I had it all over to do again from age 20 to 30, as a renter, I would have not only worked to make more money, I would have invested more of my money into whole life insurance policies, individual retirement accounts known as IRAs, and of course the stock market to ensure access to more capital in case I needed it in my mid to late 30s. The article also stated that this approach to home buying is not meant to discount the very real consequences of purchasing a house at a suboptimal time. If you buy too late, for example, you may end up losing out on additional square footage, a shorter commute, or increases in the value of your home. Or you may not. The point remains that in the moment, you can't know when will the best time be, and you got to keep your emotions out of it as well. Because a lot of people are approaching home buying like Vegas. They just got to do it now and bet all the money on the house. And remember, the house always wins. No pun intended. So set the strategizing aside and try not to think about it. If you buy a house and stay there for a while, you'll be better positioned to ride out whatever wildness the future holds. And in my opinion, to the people that are in the 20s right now, take heed to what is happening within the real estate market and across the world. Not just across the country, but across the world, because eventually you will want to purchase a home and only have a job. Only having a job is not going to cut it. So my advice to people in their 20s is consult a financial professional. If you don't have a family, heck, house hack if you can. You know, do like a lot of people I've known, when they bought their first house in their 20s, they knew they couldn't afford it, but their plan was to rent out the rooms and have the roommates pay the mortgage. Even if it's not a multifamily house, because I know that's very big on the multifamily houses, but even if it's like a regular townhouse or single family house, a lot of times people will rent out rooms. So they have people pay the mortgage and whatnot for them. And that gives that people an opportunity to save more money. Okay. And then after a year, they buy another house and do the same freaking thing. One gentleman did this, his story, I forgot his name, it's been so long. And I remember, you should look this guy up, guy out of Wilmington, Delaware. He did this when he didn't have to. He even broke up with his girlfriend to see, because he's told his girlfriend, look, we're doing great, you and me, but I want to be able to rent out the house. I want to be able to save money. I want to buy more real estate. And, you know, they had a roommate. She said, you can pick the roommate out, I don't care as long as they pay. I believe their first roommate was an older senior citizen woman who basically paid half the mortgage, but he wanted to get more roommates and she wasn't with it. So he broke up with her and got more roommates. And he even got to the point where he bought his second or third home, he was actually sleeping in the garage, which is crazy because, you know, if you're from the East Coast, winters in the East Coast is never always the best thing. Obviously, it's worse in the Midwest. My man slept in the garage to save money because he had a goal and he was able to basically own up to 5 to 10 houses and then obviously get into the commercial real estate from there. But by just continuously taking out mortgages, having roommates, saving his money, and, you know, having it, and basically because he had all his roommates, it was considered earned income. So it was, you know, when his tax returns came in, it showed that, hey, he makes his money XYZ on his job, but his rental income that he's getting is insane. So, and when it got to the point where his rental income mirrored his job and was making more than his job, and when I think he kept his job for one more year, and then he finally let his job, he finally had a conversation with his boss and said, here's my 2 weeks resignation. So I say all that to say is for the people in their 20s, the one of the worst atrocities of the most that's happening within the school system, and it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the principal's fault, it's whoever's in charge of creating the curriculum from a state level. So that's all states across the United States of America. I know there's certain charter schools and other private schools that think outside of the equation of public schools, but the biggest problem I see in the school system, and I'm not an expert by any means, but I will say this, the biggest problem I see is that money is not talked about and economics is not talked about from a chess standpoint. It's really talked about from a checkered standpoint, meaning that it might teach you how to balance a checkbook, open up a bank account. And nowadays, I mean, you can do it so easy to do it with your cell phone. It's not even a big deal, you know, like it used to be when I was coming up, you know, so there's, you know, paper's somewhat a thing of the past. But I say that to say this is that the fact that I'm kind of blown that people know more about, you know, you got the NFL Super Bowl coming up. I'm not knocking it, but people know more about NFL Super Bowl and celebrity gossip and who said what and blah, 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 than they do about owning assets and whatnot. Because the thing is, I guess it makes you dangerous, more dangerous in life if they know how to not only save a dollar, but how to invest a dollar once they get out of high school, once they get into college, once they go to skilled trade, once they go to the military. And then because then that puts them in an economic position to be able to have more access to capital and not just to only make money from their 9 to 5, getting paid twice a month or every week. So that's just one thing it's going to be more detrimental regardless of what happens with the housing market. And this is my personal opinion. Regardless of what happens with the housing market, We're in 2022, and I'm going to say from here on out, think about 2025, think about 2030. The people, and I'm talking to the people that are in their 20s, I'm talking if you just entered college, if you just entered the military, think outside of the box. If your parents are telling you just get the 40-hour a work week job and get the degree and get the skill trade and go to the military and don't think outside of that box, I'm saying it here, you're going to be screwed. So consult a financial professional. When you make good money, save and invest as much as possible. And when it comes to what you invest in, I'm not going to tell you that because I'm not a financial professional, and sacrifice as much as possible. Take a card from a lot of people who immigrate to the United States of America. A lot of sacrifices made when they come here. So meaning if you got to live in a place, own a place and have 5 to 10 people living up in there, sacrifice a couple of years of your life, especially if you're in your 20s, especially if you don't have no freaking kids and you're not married. Take advantage of that time. Have your fun. I'm not knocking that. Have your fun. I know I did. Have your fun, but be as financially responsible as you can and be as strategic as possible. And because you got to say to yourself, do I want to be basic when I get in my 30s? Because if you just have fun and party and spend money and go crazy, get turned up and TikTok it out, then you might, when you get in your 30s and you got a lot of that out of your system, you're probably going to be saying to yourself, dang, I really can't afford to buy a house now because I'm priced out of the market. I'm priced out of my city. I'm priced out of my county. I'm priced out of my state. There are states where people are priced out of, So anyways, do the great 3 free things, like, share, and subscribe. Remember, Patterson Up Properties, we wholesale properties. We work with different wholesalers and investors. We buy tax lien properties. We wholesale them. We have rental properties with Patterson Rental Properties. So all that good stuff. So definitely check us out. All our information in the description. As I always say, make money moves or you're going to live like a fool. Take care.